Alton Towers Resort is one of Britain's biggest theme parks. Opening in 1980, the park was visited by over 2 million guests in 2020 alone. The park is situated within the Staffordshire countryside. The historic Towers ruins themselves date back centuries. Due to the location of the site, the park is not permitted to build its rides above the tree line. This has led to the park creating some of the world's most innovative rides, placing itself firmly in the global rollercoaster polls. People visit Alton Towers from all over the country and even further. The park currently features 10 operational roller coasters, which owes itself very well to today's video. This is Theme Park Realm, and today we're taking a look at the top 10 roller coasters at Alton Towers Theme Park. So in at number 10 is the Octonauts roller coaster adventure. This ride certainly isn't for the faint of heart. The ride opened in March 2015, featuring a booster wheel lift hill and 143 metres of intense coaster layout. No, seriously though, this ride was a great addition to the park when it did open, and it created a small family coaster and definitely filled the gap for the park. The ride itself is manufactured by Zamperla, and it was a welcomed addition at the time. However, it may not be a solid contender against the likes of the Smiler. So in at number 9 is of course the Runaway Mine Train. Manufactured by Mack Rides, RMT is another family coaster. This one opened at the park in 1992, and the ride is a classic at the park. It opened during a period at Alton Towers that some might call the transformation period of the park, becoming a full-fledged theme park. Alton Towers really started to move away from simply an amusement park at the time when the RMT was installed. The RMT is actually currently the oldest operating roller coaster at the park, and still to this day it remains very popular with guests. The ride itself is a powered roller coaster featuring a height of around 11 metres, and the ride reaches a top speed of 22.4 miles per hour. It also features a tunnel interaction with the Congo River Rapids, and the ride, as I say, it remains hugely popular at the park. Now if you are riding, you will usually be greeted by a loud choo-choo from the ride operator, and they generally run the coaster on a 2-lap circuit. Sometimes it's less, but normally it is a 2-lap circuit that you get on there as well. Sometimes they'll even run it on 3 laps if you do a really good choo-choo. So in at number 8 we have Spinball Wizard. Now Spinball Wizard opened at the park in 2004, during a period where the park had ditched its secret weapon program. Despite the ride lacking any world first elements, however, it is still hugely popular at the park. Personally, I really enjoy this coaster. In fact, I think the park would actually benefit from having another smaller coaster like this. You know, the ride soaks up the queues on busy days, and the Spinball Wizard, it may not be, high on my list, but I'd certainly be sad to see the ride go if they did remove it. I think it provides a unique experience, and it is actually surprisingly intense, given the size of the ride as well. Now, of course, the ride was sponsored by Sega and renamed the Sonic Spinball between 2005 and 2016. Now, following its sponsorship, the colour of the track was actually slightly altered, and a Sonic statue was also implemented at the entrance of the ride. That has now been removed, but the ride does still maintain the Sonic Spinball paint scheme. They've not changed that back. Although the theme has now been removed, the statue does actually still remain at the park, and it's actually now located at one of the park's staff building entrances. I'm not 100% sure which building it's now located at, but I believe it's located at the very front of the park, and you can see it from the monorail. So at number 7 we have 13. 13 opened at the park in 2010, and the ride was the first secret weapon coaster to be built for some years. Of course, 13 actually replaced the Corkscrew, which had operated at the park since 1980, before being closed at the end of the 2008 season. 13 was opened as the world's first free-fall drop roller coaster. The ride is manufactured by Intamin and features a forward section of track, the drop itself, and then a backward section before you then launch back into the station. The ride has been designed in a way that the free fall drop is completely hidden, and the train is put back into the forwards position before returning into the station. This certainly leads to a very interesting experience for guests who have never ridden the ride or heard about the ride before. Now, whilst 13 isn't the tallest, the fastest, or the longest coaster, it is a very well themed experience. A hidden element is, it's fantastic for guests that have never previously been to the park. park. It's very unexpected, and so for that reason I do quite highly rate 13. And the only thing with 13 for me is obviously once you've ridden it once, the element of the surprise is then gone, and that's why it's a little bit higher up on my list, but it's only for that reason. So at number 6 we have Rita, formerly known as Rita Queen of Speed. This Intamin launch coaster opened at the park in 2005, and whilst this coaster does not contain any world's first elements, its launch certainly does pack a punch, and the coaster has been hugely popular at the park since it opened. Rita was originally themed to Ugland, however when 13 opened in 2010, the whole area was rethemed to Dark Forest. Some changes were made to the ride in order for Rita to fit in with the new area, slight changes were made to the station, entrance and trains, and the launch audio was also changed, with the ride of course now telling riders that they must escape at the Dark Forest itself. Now the coaster is an Intamin accelerator coaster and features a high-speed cable launch with twists and turns. Sadly, the coaster does not feature any inversions, however the ride does launch from 0 to 61.1 miles per hour in 2.5 seconds. So Rita remains, as I say, it's extremely popular even to this day at the park, and in my personal opinion it fills a gap in the park's lineup as it is the only real launched roller coaster that they've got there at Alton Towers. Don't get me wrong, it's not got the most inventive layout ever, and obviously it's not the fastest launch ever. However, because there's no other launch coasters at the park, it does push Rita a little bit higher up on my list, and obviously I have actually put it above 13 for that reason. I do also think that Rita is more re-rideable than 13 as well, in my personal opinion, but I'm sure there's going to be many people that will disagree with that. So at number 5 we have Wickerman. Wickerman opened at the park in 2018, and the ride was launched as the world's first coaster to fuse wood with fire. The coaster was highly anticipated due to the ride being the first wooden roller coaster ever to be constructed at Alton Towers. The ride of course replaced the Flume, which sadly closed some years earlier following a review of the park's ride lineup, which obviously saw the permanent closure of a number of rides including Nemesis Subterra. The Wickerman has been a huge hit with guests since it opened at the park. It's impressive both on and off ride. The ride is highly themed, there's even a pre-show prior to guests actually entering the station itself. The ride's huge Wickerman effigy towers above the coaster, and it makes for a very impressive, as I say, both off and on ride experience with this one. Although the coaster itself may not be the most thrilling, it's probably not the most intense coaster out there, it is surprisingly forceful given its size. In my opinion, it offers a fun family ride experience, and overall, the actual ride experience itself, all combined together, I do believe that makes the Wickerman, at least number 5 on the list, if not, probably for some people, even higher. In at number 4 we have Galactica. Now of course Galactica opened at the park in 2002 under its original name, Air. The ride was of course the world's first B&M flying roller coaster, and Air has always been one of my favourite coasters at the park. Despite the ride perhaps lacking detailed theming, in my opinion it is a very unique coaster, and whilst other flying coasters have opened around the world, this is still the only B&M flying coaster in the UK, and I do find the ride very impressive even to this day, with its dual loading station, the swooping layout around all the terrain, of course the station itself with the sit to fly mechanism that you've got there in the station. In 2016 Air was reimagined as Galactica, and along with this the ride's original shop was removed and replaced of course with the roller coaster restaurant. Theming was also added to the ride, including a new entrance sign and portal, which surrounds the track at the bottom of the coaster's main drop. Now, Galactica was branded as the world's first coaster fully dedicated to VR, although the park no longer runs the VR experience on the ride. Personally, I much preferred the original Air theme. However, I can see the business decision behind the retheme that they did make on the ride, and obviously the coaster itself is still exactly the same, and I still rate the ride highly, which is why it's still number 4 on my list. So at number 3 we have Oblivion. Of course Oblivion opened as the world's first vertical drop roller coaster. The ride originally opened in 1998. Now this ride is one of my absolute favourites at the park due to its combination of theme and experience. The ride was designed very carefully to create as much suspense as possible before the actual drop, and there's no doubt that this ride must still be absolutely terrifying for people that have never been on a roller coaster before. The ride starts off with a steep and slow climb before a turnaround. The train is obviously then held at the very top of the drop for a few seconds before being released straight down. The ride is the fastest ride at the park, and it's one of the fastest in the country at the moment, thanks to the heavy ride trains and of course that really steep drop. Now, another aspect of this ride which is great is that there are only 2 rows on the train, meaning that pretty much all riders are going to get a near front row experience. One thing that people certainly don't realise about Oblivion is that the drop itself isn't actually vertical, but it is 87.5 degrees. The reason for this is due to design limitations at the time. In order to keep the ride car wheels in contact with the track at all times, the track could not be 100% vertical. Now, this issue has since been resolved, and newer B&M dive coasters are now able to go the full 90 degrees, and even beyond that. They do now make use of spring-loaded wheels, keeping the wheels obviously in contact with the track at all times and reducing potential wear and tear. So in at number 2 we have the Smiler. Now, of course, the Smiler opened at the park in 2013, and this followed a long and delayed construction period. But the hype for this ride was absolutely huge, like I've never seen before. The Smiler is of course the world's first 14 inversion roller coaster, and still holds the record actually to this day, which I'm quite surprised by. But the Smiler was manufactured of course by Gerstlauer, and it does feature those 2 lift hills, one of which is completely vertical, and I really admire the creative nature of the ride's theme itself, and just how well this coaster slotted in next to Oblivion and really complemented the whole X sector area at the park as well. The Smiler will always rate highly for me. The ride made extremely clever use of the available space within the area, in my opinion, and I do think it's both very impressive and it's also a very creative ride as well when you actually look at the theme itself. Unfortunately, in recent years, the ride has become more rough, but I wouldn't say it's any more than what would be expected for a ride that is now coming up to 10 years old. The layout itself is very intense, and it's even got a couple of airtime hills, which again, I find very impressive given how compact the actual site of the coaster is. The Smiler would definitely be a solid number 2 for me. So at number 1 is Nemesis. Nemesis opened at the park in 1994, branded as the world's most intense ride experience. This coaster is certainly not for the faint-hearted, and Nemesis is another great example of the creativity Alton Towers has to employ due to the planning restrictions imposed on the park. The park literally had to dig a quarry for the ride to sit within, and the track and supports are designed seamlessly to integrate into the landscape around the ride. The ride provides an experience, in my opinion, like no other coaster, and I do think we're very lucky to have this ride here in the UK. Now, Nemesis doesn't lose its speed thanks to its clever layout, and maintains a fast pace right up until the very end of the coaster layout. Whilst it might not beat any world records, the ride certainly packs a punch, and it's still regarded by many as one of the best B&M coasters ever made. Nemesis was of course the very first secret weapon project at Alton Towers, and is responsible for starting the park's secret weapon programme, so Nemesis for me is definitely an absolute solid number 1. I'm sure there's people out there that would put the Smiler above Nemesis, so I'm very interested to hear people's thoughts on this in the comments down below. So that's my top 10 coasters at Alton Towers, and I know people will have varying opinions on this. As I said before, it's very difficult to pick a top 10 list, especially when the park does have so many great rides. As I say, I'd be very interested to hear people's thoughts in the comments down below. Please do let me know what's your top 10 list, or even just your number 1 roller coaster. Please do let me know down below. As always, if you did enjoy today's video, please don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.